Welcome to the FASA Leadership Lounge, where we discuss various policies impacting Florida school leaders. I am Michelle White, Executive Director for the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I am Jessica Janasiewicz. I serve as the lobbyist for FASA and a number of school districts in Florida. We have passed the halfway point in the legislative session, and things are starting to come together and also a little bit fall apart, depending on certain bills.
Oh my goodness. We have a lot to talk about in this update. And so we're going to get started. Biggest things moving forward, I would say, one on the Senate side, Senate Bill 166 on administrative efficiency in public schools, aka deregulation of public schools part 2,
Mhm.
sponsored by Senator Simon, was read on the floor and passed unanimously last week. On the House side, House Bill 1145, which is around workforce education, sponsored by Representative Schoaf, that expands eligibility for workforce development capitalization incentive grant program. And it includes now charter schools alongside school districts and the Florida college system institutions. That passed on the floor with a vote of 100 to 4. House Bill 355 on emergency opioid antagonists in public K 12 schools and post secondary institutions allows schools and our post secondary schools to purchase emergency opioid antagonists like a Narcan in any or more brands than just the one name brand. And that passed unanimously as well on the House floor last week. House Bill 549 on renaming the Gulf to the Gulf of America will change the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America in all state agency materials and educational resources. But special thing to note there is that it's when it's time for adoption. So for us in education, it will mean as we go through the adoption process on various materials as it references the Gulf of Mexico. That passed on the floor 78 to 29.
Mhm.
So we're moving.
We're moving. We are moving. And when we get to this point of session, we really start focusing a lot on the budget because that starts to become more of the primary thing that legislators are thinking about. Of course, that's the only thing they have to do. So they have to pass a budget, but they don't actually have to pass any policy. Of course, they do, but it's not part of their legal requirement. So this past week, they met in their respective appropriations committees and took up all of the various subcommittee budgets. So for us, our K 12 education budget was part of that. And they've got them ready in place so that they will meet on the floor, both the Senate and the House, this coming week and officially pass those budgets. That will set us up for the negotiation piece, which we expect will begin in the coming weeks. For us in education, we have some pretty minimal increases with both of these proposals, 0.7% from the House and 1.25% from the Senate. So they're not that far apart in our world of education. But overall, in the budget as a whole, they are about $5 billion apart.
With a B.
With a B. That's a pretty big gulf there between the two of them. And something that they're going to have to hash out. One of the first things they do in order to begin the budget negotiations is they determine allocations. And so the leadership say, this is the amount we're going to spend on education this year. This is the amount we're going to spend on transportation, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, they come up with a starting number, if that makes sense. What is interesting is when you're $5 billion apart, coming up with those allocations could be quite challenging. So we're going to be interested to see what happens in the coming weeks to try to come together to some extent so we can even begin the work of the budget negotiations. So stay tuned.
Yes, and we know that there's been a lot of concern over initial proposals
Mhm,
about K-12
mhm,
budget specifically, and just I would encourage our members to know, one, keep giving us feedback,
mhm.
reaching out, also reaching out to your House members and Senate members and letting them know what these changes will mean specifically for your neighborhood schools.
Mhm.
That is really important. And also know that, of course, we are here in the Capitol all throughout session,
Yep.
physically in the building and meeting with legislators as well. But watch for any calls to action
Mhm.
from us or from your leadership in the school district in trying to make some changes moving forward for sure.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Stay tuned. I think there'll be a lot of action in the coming weeks.
Yes. And definitely for next week's episode.
Yes.
So, the next thing is let's talk about a couple of places where the House and the Senate agree, where we would say they're moving through kind of
Mhm.
swiftly.
Mhm.
So, Senate Bill 1470 and House Bill 1403 relate to the safety of students. And this is the safety bill that we have been talking about the last few weeks.
Mhm.
It addresses certain pieces of the Guardian program, the locked gates and doors and instructional time plus maybe 30 minutes before school, 30 minutes after school, and then requirements for any safe school officers.
Mhm.
The but they're both agreeing and moving those bills forward. And the same with Senate Bill 772 and House Bill 597, which relates to diabetes management. This would also allow our schools to obtain glucagon for diabetic students.
Mhm.
So, should they have a diabetic
Mhm.
emergency, we would have those on hand and be allowed to have them in our schools.
Mhm.
And then the last couple of bills I want to share is House Bill 1135 and Senate Bill 1070 on electrocardiograms for student athletes, which we talked about a couple of episodes ago as well, where students that were going to participate in an FHSAA sanctioned sport would be required to have an electrocardiogram prior to participation, with the doctor signing off that they are heart healthy to participate. And of course, there are some opportunities where parents could opt out,
Mhm.
but that would be a base requirement for students to participate.
Mhm. Yes, and so those are moving along as there's agreement, and then we also have some bills where they don't seem to be agreeing on much. Some examples of that are House Bill 1111 and its companion Senate Bill 1698. That bill deals with certificates of completion. It's been moving right along in the House and has made it to the calendar in the House, and it has not moved at all in the Senate. So it has not moved, not even one committee stop. So very different there. And the same is true for House Bill 1565 and its companion Senate Bill 1440. That bill would make revisions to the scholarship programs. It has moved through the House and has not moved at all in the Senate. And we see a lot of examples of these this year, more than I think we've seen in the past, where there's bills that are just doing really well on the House side and not at all in the Senate, and vice versa. So it'll be very interesting when we start getting towards the end of session to see if some of these are placed on other bills and create those kind of train bills that we have come to expect. I think it's highly likely given this type of environment. And one other example of bills, House Bill 257 and its companion Senate Bill 1006. This looks at the pilot program for video cameras in classroom and would make it a more universal program for the state. It has moved through the House and has not moved in the Senate. It's important to note that on the Senate side, they are no longer going to be meeting in their policy committees. It will just be their appropriations committees. And then, of course, rules continues to meet. But ed policy is done meeting for the year. And so it will be difficult to get some of these bills moving because there will be no more opportunities to hear them in some of these committees.
That's right. Yeah. And so normally, we might start thinking some of these issues are dead,
Mhm.
but you just never know. And to your
Mm-mm.
point, Jessica, about how they may negotiate over time and we might see those train bills start coming into effect, is because they're trying to amend some of this language onto other bills that are moving.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
more to come for sure. Some things that FASA has prioritized this year that we are still heavily working on. So Jess, you had mentioned the slight increases
Mhm.
that both the House and the Senate have made.
Mhm.
Of course, FASA is continuing to pursue an increase in the BSA overall, trying to also make sure that there is as much local control of those dollars
Mhm.
and policies as possible. which is one of the main reasons why we have really supported the deregulation bills the last 2 years, is it really returns a lot of that local control back to the school's district and allows them to place resources where it's needed for those students that they have come to know so well.
Mhm.
The second piece is around our priority for professional learning dollars for districts for administrator professional development or professional learning. And so in the 2019-2020 school
Mhm.
year, we had the $7 million in the budget secured for that. Of course, since then, a lot has changed. One, it was in the 2021 budget, but easy veto due
Yeah.
to COVID. And
Lots
we,
of vetoes that year.
yes,
Mhm.
and we just didn't know what it was going to be like for the income for the state to be
Mm.
able to allocate all of the funds. But we also still have made lots of changes to how the budget is put together
Mhm.
overall. And so instead of having all of the categoricals that we had at one
Mhm.
time, now we're trying to find ways to add those dollars to the budget and make sure. So our pursuit this year has been for $9 million to be allocated back to the district specifically for administrator professional learning. And that's something that we are still actively pursuing.
Absolutely, absolutely. We know it would be a great benefit to our members if we had dollars specific to ensure that they can get that professional development that they need. We also have a number of athletic bills. That's something that happens with frequency here in Tallahassee. A couple bills that would impact the FHSAA and our student athletes. One is House Bill 981. It deals with your NIL in for our students, and we know, of course, there was work done on the collegiate level. The association actually has some rules governing that currently, but this would be statutory requirements for NIL. It has not moved in the Senate, but it has been trucking along in the House, so we'll see what happens there. The bill that you mentioned with EKGs for student athletes, that has been moving on both sides and is ready for the floor in both the House and the Senate. And as is Senate Bill 248, which looks to fix an issue, a statutory issue that is negatively impacting some students and not allowing them to play with the as freedom as some of our students in other categories. This is just an example of when statutes kind of added to over time. So, of course, we initially with our student athletes, if you look back in time, we just had traditional public schools and that was pretty much it. As we've expanded choice options, statute just tried to keep up with that. But in some ways, some of the things that were changed many years ago are outdated now and don't allow students to participate as freely as the legislature would like. So this would fix that issue. Those bills, both the House and the Senate version, are both ready for the floor.
Awesome. So things are definitely moving through. One other piece that we wanted to put out there that is getting a lot of press really is House Bill 1225 and Senate Bill 918, which relates to the employment of minors. So this would allow a 14-year-old to be hired as an employee. Both bills have two committee stops left and still need to be heard. So a long way to go. I know that this would potentially impact um, students and just overall mental well-being maybe of
Yes.
those 14-year-olds. And but anyway, it is a hot topic, at least moving through the
Yes.
press and everything like that. So be on the lookout for that.
Absolutely. And as we go now into the second half of the legislative session, I think it's going to be a very budget driven conversation, both obviously for us in the education world, thinking about the increases and encouraging legislators to perhaps increase even more than what they've initially proposed. And of course, with our work with the administrator professional development, that's where a lot of the conversation I think is going to be is more and more focused on the budget in the coming weeks, and then it'll be interesting to see if we do have some bills that become train bills because there are so many pieces of legislation that are only moving on one side or the other. So we'll see if that's how they choose to get things moving, but lots still to do.
Yes, and so essentially 4 weeks to go,
Mm.
and we will continue to bring you updates each week and let you know. We wanna say thank you so much for listening. Our, Discover 25 conference, by the way, registration is
Woohoo!
open, and Jessica is gonna be one of our general session speakers to give us a legislative update. So I would encourage you highly to get registered as soon as possible. Make sure you get your room and everything like that before the room block sells out. Please share the FAFSA Leadership Lounge with your colleagues. Let them know where they can get these updates and listen to them as they're maybe driving into school in
Mhm.
the morning or on their way home. But also make sure that you check out our website at FAFSA.net in the advocacy section for all of the bills that we are just not able to
Yep.
cover each week as we talk forward. So we look forward to sharing more updates and encourage you to stay tuned.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast, presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast is produced by Jeff Kirby. Special thanks to musical director David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Lounge podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topic suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.